Morning, everyone. Morning. Glad you could join us. Make it here through the snow again, second week in a row. So thankful you're all here. Thankful you could come out, join us, and celebrate our Savior's birth this morning, and celebrate with the kids that were up here singing and all that, and had a good time this morning. At this time of year, Christmas, we use a lot of words in our decorations and joy. The kids were up here singing about joy this morning, peace, hope, love, different things like that. And this morning, I want to focus on one of those, on peace. I'm going to talk about peace this morning. The angels at Jesus' birth, right? What did they call out? Glory to God in the highest, on earth peace, goodwill toward men. JD read that verse this morning from Matthew, where Jesus is speaking and he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." We can find peace in our lives through God. And life can be pretty chaotic sometimes, can't it? There's all kinds of things going on. You wake up this morning and all of a sudden it's snowing, and it's still snowing. And they said it was going to stop a while ago, and it's still snowing, right? Life's unpredictable. But through Jesus, we find peace in our lives. But this verse is not just about finding peace in the chaos and the snow that's outside and all that's going on, but it says we are to be peacemakers. Peacemakers. So what does that mean? What is a peacemaker? That's what we need to figure out, right? He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." What are we going to find out about that? So this morning we're going to look into that. What does it mean? Not just about peace, because God gives us peace in our life, as we said, but He is calling us to be a peacemaker as well. So what does that mean to be a peacemaker? We're going to jump around a little bit. I don't always like to do that, going all back and forth. So if you're going to try to follow along, we're going to be jumping around. So you'll have to get ready and get some exercise going with your thumbs this morning. But we'll have references on the screen too, so you can always, if you want to write them down or do something later, you can do that and go back with them. But we're starting with that verse we just read from Matthew. Blessed are the peacemakers. So a peacemaker says it's the children of God. Peacemakers are the children of God. Now, this verse that we read, blessed are the peacemakers, that's right in the middle of what we call now the Sermon on the Mount. And the Sermon on the Mount was the time Jesus came and Jesus was teaching, and it's a big passage, a couple chapters of Jesus teaching. Now, the Sermon on the Mount, now his teaching, it's not necessarily a teaching where he's giving a lot of salvation or things like that, but he is talking about what it means to have righteous living, what it means to be a follower of God, what your life is supposed to look like if you're going to be a follower of His. And we have this long passage, a couple chapters, as I said. Jesus is teaching about that, what it means to live a righteous life. Righteous life as a follower of God. For what it means to be a part of God's family, what your life should look like. So right in the middle of that is what we have this verse, that we need to be peacemakers. In the middle of what he's talking about, what it means to be a part of God's family, what it means to be a follower of His, what it means to live a righteous life. We also have this other section inside the Sermon on the Mount you've probably heard of before called the Beatitudes. And this particular verse comes out from what we call the Beatitudes. Now, the Beatitudes basically just means, that word means blessed or happy. If you look through that passage, several of the verses start out with blessed, 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 just like the verse that we read. Now, this section in particular is talking about some of the inner qualities of someone who's following Christ, following God. What should be everything about you? What should define you as a follower of Christ? And we have this verse in the middle of it. One of these things that it's saying should be one of your inner qualities if you're following God, if you're trying to live a righteous life according to what He wants you to do. We have this verse about saying that you must be a peacemaker. And these attributes in this verse we read and some of the other verses in that section, that should define what your life looks like as a follower of Christ. These are things that should be evident to the people that are around you. And so we have this peacemaker right in the middle of that. Right in the middle of this section talking about what your life should look like if you're a follower of God. It said you should be a peacemaker. And so we cannot really truly be following God, be a child of his without that being that peacemaker, right? Now, we can come to him. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't. If you're going to lose your salvation or something, you're not doing that. But if you're going to really follow him, if you're going to follow the direction that he's guiding you towards and the calling that he's placed on your life, you need to be a peacemaker. So being a peacemaker is essential to your walk with God. Now, we think about a lot of stuff, what's essential. I got to make sure I'm reading my Bible. I got to make sure I'm praying. Or I got to make sure I'm at church. Or I got to make sure I'm doing whatever these other things are. We talk a lot about that Jesus calls us to love each other and love our neighbors and all that. But you know what? This one here, we don't talk about this as much, do we? But Jesus is right in the middle of this. He's saying being a peacemaker is essential as well. We can't be missing that. We don't let that one go by the side. And as we focus on all this other stuff, if you are not a peacemaker, you need to get that right as well. So, of course, that's going to lead us to the obvious question, what is a peacemaker? We keep saying it over and over again. What is a peacemaker? And this is where we're going to start jumping around a little bit. Because there's a lot in the Bible really that tells us about what this means. Jesus said it here, what's a peacemaker? That you need to be a peacemaker, But there's a lot in the Bible all over that is explaining to us what it means to be a peacemaker. And we see this is important to Jesus. This is important to God. When God puts things in the Bible over and over and over and over again, there's a reason for that. It's to pound it in, to make sure you get it through your head. If you've raised children, you know, right? What do you got to do sometimes? You got to tell them over and over and over and over again. At our house, every night, before school, we tell the boys over and over again, hey, make sure you get your stuff ready for school the next day, right? Did you get your lunch? Did you get your backpack? Did you get your folder empty? Did you get your homework done? All that kind of stuff. Say it over and over again. But it's important, isn't it? And so when God puts things in the Bible over and over and over again, he's puts it there because it's important. Because he knows that we're stubborn and he knows that we don't listen very well. And he knows that we have ideas in our head and we think we know what's going on. And we don't always do we? And so God puts these things over and over again. And he's put in many different passages, and we're going to look at some of them, what it means to be a peacemaker, because he's saying this is important. If you're going to follow him, if you're going to be a follower of him, if you're going to shine for him in this world, you need to be able to be a peacemaker. So the first one we're going to look at is in Psalm 34:14. And Psalm 34:14, it says this, "Depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it." It starts out, he's telling you to avoid evil, depart from evil, turn away from it, get away from it. Now, this isn't just, I'm hoping that I'm going to miss it. I'm going to do my best to try to avoid it. It's not like, this time of year, those potholes start showing up on the road, right? And you're hoping that you're going to avoid the pothole. I'm driving and it's coming. I know it is. And, cross my fingers. And I'm going to miss that pothole coming up. And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. That's not what we're talking about here, though. He's saying depart from evil. Turn away from it. Avoid it. Everything you can. Opposite direction. We're not just driving down the road hoping that we're going to miss it. And maybe we do, maybe we don't. We're doing everything we can to put it away from us and go the other direction. We're avoiding evil with everything that we can. When we are letting sin rule our life, how can we bring peace to those around us and to our own life? Satan is one that does not bring peace. In everything Satan does, he's working to bring chaos around us. He's trying to get us distracted, trying to get us away from God. He's not bringing peace in our life. If we are letting that evil, that sin into our life, we can't be bringing peace because we're letting Satan take us away from peace. And this verse is saying, peace is this way and the evil is that way. We need to put our back to it and go towards peace at all times. This isn't something that we just do once or twice, something that just happens every now and then. This is every day. We need to wake up. We need to make that choice. I'm pursuing peace today. I'm turning away from evil, from sin, from the things that are trying to pull me back away from God. And I am today going to work to move towards Christ and move towards the peace and the joy that he brings. It's an everyday choice. Every day. Every part of the day. continually throughout, that we are avoiding evil, departing from it, and seeking and pursuing peace. Again, it's just like we said with the evil, it's not just that you're hoping that you're avoiding it. The peace, we're not just hoping that we run into it either. We are deliberately going out and looking for the peace of God and trying to get that as part of our lives. It is an active decision that we have to do to get that peace into our life. The next verse we have up there, 2 Corinthians 13:11, says this: "Finally, brethren, farewell. Be perfect, be of good comfort, be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace shall be with you." So it says to live in peace requires a couple things: comfort, being like-minded, and being perfect. Okay, perfect. What does that mean? How many of us are perfect? I'm not. Perfect, what does that mean? Well, often in the Bible, perfect means like a completeness. But in this particular verse, in this word, it goes even farther than that. It's not just completeness, but it's talking about repairing or mending or restoring something. So if we're going to have peace, if we're going to bring peace, if we're going to be peacemakers, we have to work towards restoration and repair as well. See, we're not just hoping that we're doing our part and then everyone else is going to have to change around us. We need to work sometimes to bring that peace and that restoration around us as well. We want peace in our lives. We need to be working and trying to help the others around us find peace as well. A couple weeks ago, the last time I spoke, we looked at the book of Philemon, and we looked at how Paul, in that book, he was acting as a peacemaker there. He was trying to bring people who had been estranged back together. And so that's something that we need to look at sometimes, and we need to include into our lives. We need to work towards restoration for those that are around us. I know sometimes people are going to fight you about it. Sometimes people are going to say, get out of here, it's none of your business. Don't butt your head in where it's not supposed to be. And sometimes we got to accept that, don't we? But we need to be working to try to bring that restoration into the relationships that we have with people. And sometimes we might have to work and try to help with other people as well, try to help bring people back together around us. But don't miss that one about our relationships as well, because that one is the one that gets hard sometimes. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, when we've messed up a relationship and then we have to take that step to restore it. That's something we have to do as well. That is being a peacemaker, trying to fix the problems that we've caused also, because we cause a lot of them, don't we? We've had plenty of times and plenty of relationships in our life that we've messed up somehow. And sometimes, unfortunately, what have we done? We've just kind of left it go and we've lost that relationship along the way. But God is saying to bring peace, we need to look to work towards restoration as well, to repair those things, to mend them and fix them. But it's not just that restoration. It also said being like-minded. Like-minded. Like-minded in what? Like-minded as we're pursuing Christ. You know, we can be like-minded in a lot of things that aren't very godly, can't we? But we are to be like-minded as we pursue Christ. That means that we need to fix our mind on Christ and be moving towards Him and working to help other people do that as well. Help bring the other people that are with us towards Christ as well. Try to help fix the relationships, to restore relationships that we just talked about, so that we can be all focused on Christ together, so that we can all be like-minded in this church that we're a part of. I hope that you would want the other people that are here to be focused on Christ as well, wouldn't you? That we can all be like-minded, that everyone in this room, we can be like-minded, focusing on Christ, going towards Him together. Because you know what? When we are all focused on Christ and we're all moving towards Him, then what happens to some of those problems that divide us sometimes? They start to not be so important all the time, do they? Once we realize that what God is doing for us and the way God is working in our lives, and we start sharing those things with each other, and we all start locking arms and going towards God together, we start to realize that maybe some of those problems that have been dividing us, they don't matter as much anymore, or they're not as big of a deal as they seem like as they were before. We need to be working to restore relationships, our relationships, maybe help others around us, but also to be like-minded, all going towards Christ together. The next verse we're going to look at is Romans 14:19. Now, in this one it says, "Let us therefore follow after the things which make for peace, and things wherewith one may edify another." This is the verse that I always liked about it, the way it says. It's pretty simple, but it contains a lot of truth, doesn't it? Follow after things that make for peace, and follow after things that edify each other, that build up each other, that encourage each other. A peacemaker is an encourager. We need to be trying to encourage the people around us, to build them up, to help them out. When we see them struggling, that we're there to try to step in and try to help them out. When we see someone doing something well, to encourage them to say, "Keep it up. You're doing great." God sees it. Even though no one else does, God knows what you're doing. Don't get weary. Don't get tired. Don't let it pull you down. There are so many things around us in our culture, in our world, that are just working to tear us down, aren't there? To try to pull us down, to try to make us feel bad about ourselves. That are just doing the opposite of peace and encouragement. We are here to be a light in the world. And by doing that, we need to be encouraging each other. We need to be following after peace. That everything that we're doing, we need to be trying to pursue peace in it. Is it bringing peace, or is this bringing confusion and anger and discouragement? So we need to stop and think about, what are we putting into our lives? Are we putting things into our lives that are going to bring peace? Or are we filling up our lives with things that are taking us down the opposite direction? Because how can we bring peace? How can we follow after those things? How can we encourage others when we're putting everything in us that does the opposite? See, it starts with us. Starts with us. We need to make sure we're putting the right things into our lives. Because there's all kinds of stuff that we can find out there that are going to put the opposite of peace in our lives, aren't there? All kinds of stuff, whether you're looking on just watching TV or trying to watch the news or trying to follow whatever it is that interests you, sports or politics or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff in there that just is divisive, isn't it? And it's trying to do the opposite of bringing peace. And it's trying to tear us apart and push us away and trying to make us argue with each other. Even just as you're going through a website somewhere or trying to look at the news, what do they do with the headlines all the time? They put something on there to try to make you emotional, try to make you grab onto it, don't they? So it's hard to avoid those things. It's hard to find those things to seek that are peaceful. So we need to seek them out. We need to make sure the things we're putting into our life are things that are working towards peace. Things that are going to help us encourage each other. We need to try to avoid those divisiveness that is around us. The things that are trying to tear us apart. Things that are trying to push us away. The things that are trying to make us angry at each other. We're putting things into our lives and in our hearts and in our minds that is making us angry with one another and arguing with one another. Then we need to stop and think about if that's something that needs to be in our life, don't we? Now, we need to stand up for God and for truth. I'll tell you that. And sometimes people aren't going to like that, are they? And people who don't have God in their life, they're not always going to understand that. And so there might come times where you need to stand up for truth and for God. But you know, these other things that are coming in, if they're causing you to tear other people down, if they're causing you to get angry with people, if they're causing you to argue with people, then maybe that's something we need to take out of our life some or all the way. And that even goes for things when you're on social media and things like that. You know, it's really easy sometimes to put stuff on there because we don't see the other person that we're talking to, right? Now, when you're in an argument with someone, you're yelling at them right there face to face, and sometimes it has an effect on you. But when you're online sometimes, you don't know who you're talking to. So it's really easy to be divisive and get angry with them and yell at them, isn't it? But you know what is usually next to you in that social media or whatever it is you're doing? Your name. And other people see that. And if other people know that you're a follower of God or that you're saying you're a follower of God, and then they see the way that you're talking to people online, that doesn't match, does it? How is that edifying each other, encouraging each other, trying to work towards peace? We need to be real careful about the things that we put into our life because there's so much out there that brings the opposite of peace. I need to be really careful about eliminating that we're not getting full of anger and divisiveness and hate, that we're trying to fill ourselves up with God instead of those other things. That is why, we talked earlier about, we always talk about, got to read the Bible, pray, go to church, all those things. And those things are all important. But it's important because we need to fill ourselves up with those things, fill ourselves up with God, so that we recognize the stuff that is out there that is leading us away from peace and away from God. And we say, no, I need to get this out of my life. This doesn't need to be a part of my life. Because this is leading me to get angry with people. This is leading me to argue with people. This is leading me to be more divisive than being a peacemaker. This is leading me to tear people down instead of building them up. I'm destroying relationships instead of restoring them. So we need to be really careful about the things we're putting into our heart. These verses we're talking a lot about pursuing after peace and seeking peace. And how can we be doing that when everything we're putting into us is leading us the opposite direction? We need to be real careful about the things we're putting in. That we need to be focused on pursuing after peace. Like that last verse said in Romans, follow after the things which make for peace. When we're going to do something, when we're trying to do something with our life, when we're trying to do something new, when we're trying to interact with someone, that's the question we need to be asking ourselves. Are we leading to peace, the peace of God, or is this causing problems and anger and division? We've talked about what a peacemaker is. How do we live as a peacemaker then? How do we take those things and put them into our life so that we can move forward and be this peacemaker that God is calling us to be? Be the peacemaker that God has said, that Jesus said in that sermon we talked about, that this is an essential part about being a follower of me. You have to get this down if you're going to be a follower of me. In James 3:18, it says this, and the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. Now, it might sound a little confusing sometimes on the surface, but what that is talking about says that when you can be a peacemaker, when you are trying to bring that peace to yourself and to the people around you, it creates a culture of peace around you. And it can start to spread around you to the people that are around you, the people you interact with. And that as you are spreading that peace, and you're being a peacemaker yourself, you start to create and cultivate the conditions for righteousness to thrive. Okay? So what that means is you are seeking peace. You're trying to bring peace around you, the peace of God, into your relationships that you have, into your family, to your friends. And that makes an impact on people. That you working makes an impact on people. And that starts to spread to the other people around you. And as that spreads around you more and more, creates the conditions for the righteousness of God to thrive. James is writing this. It kind of uses a bit of an analogy of farming or gardening, especially back to the people he'd be writing to would really understand it, right? But you think of the peace that you're bringing is like the fertile soil, good fertile soil. Anyone who's ever done gardening, stuff's not going to grow very well if you don't have good soil there, is it? And so the peace is what makes the soil fertile and good and ready for growth. And so as you bring that peace and that spreads out in that fertile soil, then it allows the fruits of righteousness to grow up around you. And that spreads to the people that are around you as well. So if you are trying to find godly righteousness in your life, you need to create a peaceful environment for it to grow. That starts with finding the peace of God in your life and then working to spread it around you. If everything around you is chaos all the time, everything around you is turmoil, we need to look at ourselves and figure out, okay, can I be doing more to bring peace? Or the reason that everything is chaos around me all the time is because I'm creating the opposite of peace around me. Maybe it's me. We need to start with ourselves, don't we? Now, sometimes God is allowing something into your life to build your faith, to test you in some way. We have the story of Job to always look back on, don't we? Where God allowed Job to be tempted and to go through some things in order to test his faith and help him grow. And so sometimes those things are going on in our life. So I don't get me wrong that I'm telling you that if your life is hard right now, or your life is chaotic, it's your fault, or that it's something you're doing wrong. But what I am saying is that when we are in those situations, we need to take a look at ourselves first and figure out if there's something more that we need to be doing. Can I be doing more to be bringing peace to my life, to be seeking God's peace in my life? We're really good when there's problems to start looking at other people around us to find the solution to those problems, aren't we? When there's something wrong in our life, the first place that most of us look is around us. Okay, who's causing me a problem right now? Okay, I'm having a situation, something's not going right with me right now, so I need to find who is causing that. The problem is a lot of times it's us, isn't it? And unfortunately, that's one of the last places we look. So we need to stop. If we're having issues, if our life is chaotic around us, the first place we need to stop and look is at ourselves. Can I be doing more to bring peace in my life? Do I need to be more of a peacemaker so that I can start bringing peace to the people around me as well? So that as we can spread that peace, that we can allow God's righteousness to grow and to thrive in our lives. We need to allow that righteousness to grow in our life. And by doing that, we can help create the conditions for righteousness to grow in the people of those around us as well, the lives of those around us as well. That is what that verse is saying. That everyone has to make their own choice. We can't make the people around us serve God. We can't make the people around us turn to Him. We can't make the people around us live a godly or a righteous life. They have to make those choices themselves. But what James is telling us is that we can try to make the conditions for them as best as we can. If there are people in your life that you're worried about, people who have not come to God, people who are turning away from God, who are living a sinful life, then what this verse is telling us is that you need to work to be a peacemaker in their life so that you can help do your best to allow the condition of their heart to be ready for righteousness to grow. And we do that by spreading peace. We do that by doing all those things we just talked about, restoration, being like-minded, and following after peace. Now, this last verse on here, I put it wrong in the bulletin. So if you're trying to mark the verses down, you might want to change that in the bulletin. I think I put 12:14 and it's 12:18. So just if you're trying to look those up later or anything, mark that down. But it's Romans 12:18 is this verse. And it's another one that always stood out to me that I liked. And it says this: if it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Saying that everything that you have, everything that you can do, as much as you can, without exception, live peaceably. Live peaceably with all men. It's like we said before, this isn't those things where you're going down the road hoping you're going to avoid a pothole. This isn't something where you're going down the road hoping that you're going to find some peace. It's saying you need to do everything that you can to try to bring peace, to live peaceably with all men. That every decision you're making, you need to be thinking about, okay, is this going to be something that is going to cause problems or cause divisiveness, or is this going to bring peace? Everything that you do should be working towards peace, bringing the peace of God to yourself and to those around you. Trying to be that peacemaker in everything that you do. Every step that you take, every single day, everything you're doing should be working to live peaceably with all men. Now, did you notice at the end of that verse, who did it say we live peaceably with? Everybody, right? Were there any qualifiers on that? There were no qualifiers, were there? You say, okay, well, what about someone who's always causing me problems? What about someone who's always trying to hurt me in some way? What about someone who's always trying to tear me down? What about someone who doesn't want anything to do with me? Who says things about me to other people? The person at work that is constantly causing you problems, constantly trying to undermine you. The family member who is always ostracizing you and pushing you to the side. Whoever else, the person at church here, unfortunately it happens sometimes too, doesn't it? The person at church who keeps trying to isolate you. What does this verse say? It says you can exclude those people? No, it says everybody. You're living peaceably with everybody, doing everything you can to bring peace with everyone. Even if they are not treating you well, saying you are still living in peace with them. See, God does this frequently where He gives us these things without any qualifiers. And saying you need to live this way with everybody. Doesn't matter what other people think. Doesn't matter what other people treat you. Doesn't matter anything like that. That you need to live this way with everybody. And going back to what we said a few verses ago, remember when we're a peacemaker and we start and we live in such a way to create peace, then that creates conditions for the people around us to find peace as well. So if there's people who are treating you badly, there's people who are not loving you, there's people who are trying to hurt you in some way, as we just said, what do we do? This verse didn't say, we were just talking about, you can ignore them or push them aside. As we read before, work to create peace, because as you create peace around you, it can spread. So if someone is not bringing peace in your life, is trying to hurt you, we don't get to just ignore them. In fact, God says, hey, you need to work even harder to bring peace around them, because then it can spread. It's not to run away from them, it's to go even harder towards them in bringing peace. And God does this with a lot of things in our life. And because our first instinct a lot of times when someone isn't treating us well is to do what? Turn, put them behind us, and get as far as we can the other way. And a lot of times God instead says, you know what actually you should be doing is go even harder towards them and try to be a better example to them and try to love them more and try to bring more peace in their life and try to bring more joy to their life and try to shine Jesus even brighter in their life. And that's the same here. It says, live peaceably with all men, with everyone, in everything that you do. Every choice that you make should be with the thought, am I bringing peace? Am I bringing the peace of God to myself and to those around me? And if people aren't treating me well, if people are doing things that is bringing the opposite of peace, then he says, bring even more peace to them. Run even harder towards them. Love them even more. And by doing those things, that is how we are a peacemaker. That is how we can live as a peacemaker. And we can make that an essential part of our life. If we go back to the beginning, I know we went through a whole bunch of verses all over the place, but go back to the beginning in Matthew. And we're talking about when Jesus is giving that Sermon on the Mount. And he's giving these things that he's saying, this is what your life should look like if you're a follower of me. And one of those things is a peacemaker. And that is how we're going to live up to that he is calling us to do. By everything that we're doing, stopping and saying, am I going to bring peace with this? Is this going to bring peace to those that are around me? Is this going to help other people find the peace of God? Or is this going to bring divisiveness and anger and bitterness? We are always to be bringing peace, spreading peace. Spread the peace so that it spreads to those around us, so that it creates that opportunity for righteousness to grow and to thrive. So everything we need to do, our priority should be, am I bringing the peace of God to these things? Am I bringing the peace of God to those that are around me? Now that starts, if you don't have a relationship with God, you can't have the peace of God. So that starts with finding that relationship with God first. We didn't necessarily have a message all about salvation or finding God, but if you don't have a relationship with God, that's where it starts. And in a minute here, when we're going to be singing and we're going to finish up the service, if you don't know what that means, we have people who would love to come and talk to you, let you know what that means, show you what the Bible from the Bible what that means. But that's the start, is to have that relationship with God. Because we can't have the peace of God in our life, and we can't spread the peace of God in our life as peacemakers if we don't have God in our life. So that's where we need to start. But as we go out today, go back out into the snow. It's still snowing, it looks like. They said probably 10 o'clock it might start, and it's 11, it's still snowing. But we go out into the snow, and someone cuts you off, and you're having a hard time stopping because of that snow out there, and just stop and think, okay, peace. Be a peacemaker, right? Be a peacemaker. And take that and start going through the rest of your day. When your neighbor today goes and shovels everyone else's sidewalk and he doesn't shovel yours for some reason, be a peacemaker. It's okay, right? It's okay. I'm glad that you helped other people out who needed the help. Be a peacemaker. Everything that we're doing starts with peace. Live peaceably with all men as much as you can, right? Be a peacemaker. God, we come to you and just thank you again for this time, for the day. We thank you for these lessons you've given us about spreading peace, about spreading your peace to those that are around us. Pray that you encourage each one of us to be that peacemaker that we need to be, to spread your peace to those around us, that we, by doing that we can allow that righteousness of yours to thrive and grow in our life and the lives of those around us. Pray that anyone today who doesn't know you, they would today consider that they would talk to someone, that they would come to you, pray, that they accept you in their lives and hearts today, that they can be a peacemaker for you as well. Just thank you again for all the time you've given us. Praise in your name. Amen. All right, this time, why don't you stand with me?